If you've been scrolling through endless listings, watching videos that throw specs at you, and still feel a knot in your stomach because you're not sure which moisture analyzer actually delivers on the promise of lab-grade accuracy, you're not alone. I've been in the same spot, juggling a small food science lab and a hobbyist woodworking shop, wondering whether the extra cost of a professional-grade unit would actually show up in the results I need day-to-day. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to walk through why the A&E MF50 might be the sweet spot for people who need precision without turning their budget upside down, and where it could end up feeling like overkill. First, let's step back and think about what a moisture analyzer does in the real world. In a bakery, you might need to confirm that a batch of flour stays under a certain moisture level to prevent spoilage. In a small-scale polymer lab, you're checking resin cure percentages. Even a hobbyist making homemade cosmetics wants to know that a lotion isn't too wet, because that can affect texture and shelf life. The common thread across all those scenarios is the need for repeatable, quick measurements on a handful of grams of material. If you've ever tried to do that with a kitchen scale and an oven, you know the frustration: long heating cycles, guesswork on when the sample is truly dry, and the inevitable waste of material. A dedicated moisture analyzer solves those pain points by heating the sample in a controlled pan, automatically detecting when weight stabilizes, and reporting the exact moisture content to 4 decimal places. The MF50 is built for exactly that workflow. You drop a sample into an 8.5 cm pan, press start, and get a readout that says something like 0.001% moisture after a few minutes. That level of readability, 0.0001 grams, means you're not just seeing dry or wet, you're seeing the subtle changes that matter for quality control. Now let's talk about the practical strengths that actually show up when you put the MF50 on a bench. The 70-gram capacity might sound modest, but in most lab or workshop settings you're dealing with sample sizes far smaller than that. The pan's 8.5 centimeters diameter accommodates both loose powders and small solid pieces without needing to grind everything down to a dust. The readability of 0.0001 G translates directly to a moisture resolution of 0.001%. That's the kind of granularity that lets you differentiate between a batch that will shelf for 6 months versus one that starts showing signs of mold after 3. The device also comes with a 5-year warranty, which is a solid signal that the manufacturer expects the unit to survive the daily heating cycles and the occasional accidental spill. From a workflow perspective, the MF50's automatic tare and sample hold features mean you don't waste time zeroing the scale for each run. You can line up multiple samples and let the machine handle the timing. In practice, that speeds up a typical quality check routine from 10 minutes per sample with a makeshift oven to about 3 minutes per sample with the analyzer, freeing you up to focus on other tasks. Every piece of equipment has trade-offs, and the MF50 is no exception. The biggest limitation is the sample size ceiling. If you ever need to test bulk material, say, a kilogram of dried herbs, you'll have to split it into multiple runs, which adds handling time and introduces a tiny amount of cumulative error. The unit's heating element, while precise, does run a bit hotter than some entry-level models, meaning very heat-sensitive samples could degrade if you don't monitor the cycle closely. The price point sits above the $300 range you'll find on basic countertop scales with built-in humidity sensors, so if you're only checking moisture once a month, the MF50 might feel like an unnecessary expense. Finally, the interface isn't a touchscreen. It relies on a small LCD and a few buttons, which can feel a little dated if you're used to modern app-driven devices. Those who should skip this analyzer are people who only need occasional, rough estimates of moisture, like a home baker who's comfortable eyeballing dough consistency, or anyone whose workflow revolves around large batch measurements where the 70-gram limit becomes a bottleneck. So, who walks away with a clear win? If you run a small lab, a food testing kitchen, or a hobbyist shop where you consistently need to verify moisture at the sub% level, the MF50 gives you a reliable, repeatable result without the complexity of a full-scale industrial instrument. It shines for anyone who values speed because the automatic stabilization algorithm cuts heating time and precision, thanks to that 0.001% moisture readout. It also makes sense for educators teaching analytical chemistry. The clear readout and straightforward operation let students focus on the concepts rather than fiddling with complicated software.